All right. Looks like we're live. My indicator is telling me that we are live. So, hello, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, that are subscribed to Grind Reloaded. I pose a question to you. How do we survive the inflation that we're seeing in the used car business today? How do we survive it and remain profitable and remain stable as a business? Well, I got some ideas. The very first thing you need to do is to understand the times that we are in and make every decision from this point be in alignment with that. Where we are right now is uncharted waters in a sense. It is not completely uncharted waters because we have been here before. We have been in a recession before. This is very similar to what happened in 2006, 7, and 8. This is where we are right now. We are reaching high levels of inflation. And it's almost, think about it as a balloon. Think about it as a balloon. When you have a balloon and you put too much air in that balloon, what happens? It pops. Because the balloon can only hold so much. Right now, we are in the phase of pushing air into that balloon. All of the dealers that are going and overpaying, you are a part of pushing the air into that balloon. And as dealers around the country continue to blow air into that balloon, it's going to pop. And that's called the bottom of the recession. Right now, we are in the beginning of this idea of the recession. All of the indicators are there. Inflation is constantly rising in every aspect of life. It's not just the car business. I was talking to one of the customers that came up today, and she said, because I was telling her, hey, my lot looks really bare. I'm going to show you all that in a minute. And, I was talking to her and I said, listen, our prices are going to go up because we're having to combat the rate of inflation. And unfortunately, the consumer is the person that typically pays for the inflation in this country because we are a consumer-driven country. So, but there's only so many consumers that are going to pay that inflated rate. And then you got to think about the stability of the consumer. Are they stable in their finances? And that answer overwhelming, I can't even talk. Overwhelming no. They are not stable. They are on the cuffs of losing just about everything they have, some people. Some people right now are facing the hard conversations of how do we remain in our property. So many states around the country are now lifting their moratoriums on evictions. Me being a real estate broker, I have to follow that. So in Georgia, for an example, August 12th, just depending on what the governor of Georgia does, I can now file on 4 of the clients that are delinquent in my company. So every state has their own agenda when it comes to combating the level of inflation. But I say that to say the consumers, inflation and recession works until the consumer has no money to circulate and to stimulate the economy. That is how the United States economy works. Money goes to the people buy stuff, and it recirculates within the country, the country. It just goes from one hand to the other. But that circulation is called economy, right? It builds the whole system that we are founded on. So if people stop recirculating their money into the economy, then that means people stop buying things. They stop buying cars. They stop buying luxury things. They start selling their toys. They start selling boats. They start selling motorcycles. They start selling RVs. They start selling all of these things because they are trying to harvest as much money as they can for the basic essentials. So things like food and shelter and the basic necessities. Okay? So that's where we are. That's where we are right now. We are on the cusp of a major correction in our economy. And the dealers that are buying cars right now from the auctions at higher prices than they should be, or at a higher price than they should be bought, they are in fact blowing air into the balloon that will ultimately succumb to the pressure. Now, a lot of people in my last video when I talked about the recession and the correction, or whatever, however you want to categorize it, when I talked about that, a lot of people asked, well, when is it going to happen? Well, I'm not a Houdini. I don't know. But if you follow the trends, you will see it. It will happen, and it will be clear. People will stop buying your cars. That will happen. It was notorious. The housing market crashed, but guess what else crashed? The automobile industry had to have a bailout by President Obama in 2008, 2009. So it's going to happen, but I think what's going to happen this time is going to be a little bit different from the new car stores, because the automotive bailout in the back in 7 and 8 and 9 was mostly geared towards the manufacturers. But we're going to see, I think, it become a little bit different, because it's going to impact actual buyers. Not buyers, sorry. It's going to impact independent dealers this time, I think. And the reason it's going to impact independent dealers is because when that correction happens, if you're not careful with your inventory, if you're just buying a surplus of these inflated vehicles, then you're bound to get stuck with some of them. Now, if you're doing, say, if you got a market for it and you're doing 1 or 2 inflated vehicles at a time and you are flipping them, then that's fine. Yeah, I think you'll be okay as long as you got the market and you got an established consumer base for your product. But when that consumer base goes away, that's when all bets are off. That's when you're going to see those same vehicles that are selling for 200, 300% more than they should be start coming through the auction, and they're going to be trying to liquidate them. So I think that this is a good opportunity for people who have the same mindset as myself, as I refuse to pay for vehicles at a highly inflated rate. Now, we all have at some point bought something and paid more than what it was technically worth. I've done that before the pandemic. I've done it after the pandemic, or in the pandemic. But there is a rule that you should not break. You should not do it if it's over a certain percentage. And I'll leave that up to you to decide. I'll give you an example. If a car pre-pandemic sold for $1,000, you shouldn't double the value of that vehicle and pay it. Meaning you shouldn't pay $2,000 for that vehicle, because now you're paying $1,000 of inflation. And you know it. Like, it's evident. You're paying $1,000 of inflation. Okay? Now, if you pay $300 of inflation, which one you think is a better option? Either paying $1,000 more or $300 more, right? So everything is relative to how much you are actually keeping your inflation rate at. Okay, I know it's a lot. But that's how we're gonna combat where we are. Be mindful of your rate of inflation or the amount of inflation that you're paying. Okay, so that number depends on you and your comfort. For me, mine's right now is about between $300 to $400, because you got to think about this, guys. Now, apparently, because most dealers, if I ask you, if I met you at an auction and you're seeing and you're witnessing the same inflation that I'm witnessing, right? We're looking at the same auction. We're on the same lane, and I turn to you and I say, man, how are they going to sell those cars, right? That is the question that most people ask themselves when they see a vehicle being sold for a highly inflated rate. If you take that same car before the pandemic and it sold for $1,000, and now you're seeing it sell for $2,000, the most rational person is going to ask themselves, well, I wonder, are they going to be able to sell that car? That's logically the first question that we ask. And that answer, I don't necessarily know that answer, because that answer is just depends on the dealer. But that is the big question that most dealers are asking themselves. Can these people sell these cars? Are they going to be able to sell them after paying this highly inflated rate? So now that we talked about inflation, and I told you kind of, that we are in a problem, right? We are in for it right now. It's just going to be very interesting to see what decisions some of these independent dealers make, because what I'm seeing at the auctions are a very irrational, reckless decision making. And they are, I guess, maybe unknowingly contributing to the blowing into the balloon, as I said in the beginning of this video, the metaphor. They're blowing into the balloon. And the balloon can only take so much pressure. And once that balloon reaches its capacity of that pressure, it's going to pop. And that popping is going to be simulated in the form of people stop buying your cars. People do not have money to buy your cars. Right now, the president of the United States is really trying to project a level of confidence in the United States economy so that consumers stay out of their head and do not realize that inflation is reaching a point of correction. Inflation is always around, and it develops depending on supply and demand and the times and all of that stuff, right? So inflation is always there. It's just a matter of how much inflation is there and how that inflation impacts the consumers. If the consumers have money to put into the economy, then inflation can be controlled. It can be maintained because people are actually still putting money into the economy. But the president of the United States currently today is doing his darndest to try and maintain a sense of calm when it comes to the United States economy. But what's surprising to me, and I don't want this video to go political, it's all about the cars and what decision making you should do in combating the level of inflation. But what is so surprising to me is that the United States government, I guess you could say Congress, is not really aiding or abetting that same notion that the president is trying to present to the American people. The president wants us to believe that everything is fine, go back to work, go back to school, and he's doing that. People may knock me, but it's a very clever thing to do. Because if you do not keep the consumer confidence high, you will realize that recession and that balloon will pop. So basically what the president is trying to do, in my opinion, is as the people are blowing, for instance, the car business, you're blowing into this balloon. The president is trying to squeeze the other side to blow some of that air out or push some of that air out so that it does not pop. Now, will he be effective in doing that? Only time will tell. But I'm telling you right now, if the consumers get into even more trouble than where they are, because right now things are so weird because there are like moratoriums on evictions, there are moratoriums on foreclosures. All of these protections are here to try and keep things from getting just completely out of control. But that can only happen for so long. You can't take someone's rental property and tell them, hey, you have to let the person live rent-free forever, right? That's not a sustainable ideology because that same person is gonna pop. Their balloon is gonna pop, right? If they are to pay their mortgage continuously, then they need to receive the income from that rental property. In some cases, not everyone have mortgages, but the ones that have mortgages, they need to have that money recirculate from that tenant to them to the bank so that they can keep their mortgage. So again, it's all intertwined because our economy is not predicated on gold, as people say. I mean, the weight of the currency and all that stuff is manipulated by so many different factors. But the truth of the matter, when it comes down to the nitty and the gritty, if people don't have money to put into the economy will crash. That's just the simple fact of the matter. Okay? And so that's why we saw that stimulus check really do a good job for the used car business. Like we were selling like crazy. Everybody, if you put your down payment at $1,200, you could have a car that, and the car got to run, but it could have, it could not be the perfect vehicle. It could be as many imperfections as possible, and that car still would sell. I think I just turned on the chat. No, I didn't. I don't know what I just did there. All right. If you guys have questions while I'm chatting, definitely put them in the chat box. This is a live video. But yeah, so the president is trying to keep the wheels on the train. I hate to give him credit for that. I don't hate to give him credit for that. I give people credit where credit is due. But at the same time, it's going to come a point, where, as a used car dealer, like for my size dealers, and I think most of you guys that follow Grind Reloaded are probably just getting into the car business or have aspirations of getting into the car business. And so you're not at a very sustainable level financially to supplement things like this in times like this. Fortunately for me, I have quite a few accounts on the books. Now, those accounts are just that. They are accounts. They're paper, right? The people still have to come in and pay. If the people do not come in and pay, then this balloon over here at Dealmart will pop. That is the sentiments of it. Nobody is protected from ruin if their product fail to sell. If you stop selling vehicles today, if people stop paying buy here, pay here notes today, you have no income. And that's just a matter of fact. And so that is why you have to be very smart in what you are doing at the auctions today. Do you want to be a part of the problem or part of the solution? By going and paying into inflation, by going and blowing into the balloon, you are not becoming part of the solution. Part of the solution would be to say, well, here's what my solution is. I'll tell you what my solution is. You can make up your own solution and figure out what works best for you. So I posed the question on how do we combat the inflation? You know what? I don't even remember what the title was of this video. I need to write these titles down so I can make sure I'm staying on message, staying on topic. But yeah, so my solution to this madness is gonna be to do this. I'm gonna show y'all my camera. That is my camera in my desk, and that camera is pointing to my lot. We're gonna walk out there in a second, but that's my lot. I have literally 2 units on my lot. I just bought one today. So when it gets here, which will probably be Friday or Saturday, tomorrow or Saturday, then I will have 3 units in inventory. That is how tough it is. And it has nothing to do with me not having money to source inventory. It has everything to do with me not being willing to buy into inflation. I refuse to pay a certain level of inflation. Now, as I said before, depending on you, you have to determine how much of the inflation you're willing to take on. And so for me, my level is about $300 to $400. I'll go $300 to $400 over what I should pay. I will do that because, again, you have to still remain competitive. You do, and that's just a matter of fact. But depending on what your profit margins were to begin with, that's how you get into the conversation of, okay, how much inflation should I pay at the auction, Raymond? You're telling me that, hey, there's going to be a crash, there's going to be a pop of the balloon. So what should I do? My answer to that would be, if your margins were already tight, then you just need to keep your money and ride out the storm. If you did buy here, pay here, still attend auctions, stay a part of the routine in your life. Don't let the routine stop, because at any point, prices, can start to fall down. So you want to, be into the routine still, so that you can see, once you start to see that trend going down, then you'll know, hey, it's time for me to go buy inventory. But if you had already tight margins, okay, that's the first pre-qualifier. If you were only making $500 to $600 a car before all of this happened, keep your money. Keep your money. Keep your money. Because think about it. We make our money when we buy the car at the auction. If we get a good deal at the auction, we're going to have a good payday. No matter how much you desire, man, it is raining like crazy. Wow. No matter how much you desire to make, the reality of the situation is every vehicle has a number. And every vehicle has a price, a number. And that number is not predicated on your hopes, your dreams, your desire, your needs, or any of that. It is what it is. So if you go and you pay more than you should pay, then you're going to feel the wrath on the other side of it. None of us are buying cars and selling them on our lot for free because you're not going to make any money, right? You have to profit. And so if your profit is being evaporated by inflation, then you can't do that. Now, some people will argue, okay, Raymond, well, you're right. It is inflation right now. Prices are high, but the consumers right now are covering the inflation. And that could be true depending on where you are. Depending on your circumstance, you could very well go and buy a car that is worth $1,000 and you buy it for $2,000 and you're able to sell it for $3,500 or $3,000. You could very well still do that in your market. It could be possible. In my market, I haven't tried it enough. I can't really say. What I can say is this. I have watched the same dealers, because I'm a very, I try to find meaning in everything. Like I try to look at every part of the situation. Meaning, here's some examples. When I go to the auction here in, say, for instance, Phoenix City, Alabama, in Valley Auto Auction in Phoenix City. I take note of the same dealers. I'm taking note of how much they're spending at the auction. I'm being observant. So I'm taking notes of how many, when they come. So every week, obviously, there's an auction every week. So for a month period, there's 4 auctions in that period of time. So I'm watching those same dealers, and I'm wondering, I'm looking to see, are they buying? How much are they paying? And then I'm figuring out where is their dealership. I'm figuring out where are they located, and I'm following their inventory. Like, that's how deep you have to be, I think, in these times, because it's so uncertain. Do you want to be the guinea pig to go out there and spend your money and try to figure out if it can work? I don't think that's a good idea. I think being observant, most of the dealerships, the auctions, the people are pretty friendly. You just go and spark a conversation. Hey, man, where's your shop at? What's the name of your location? For me, I always wear, when I'm at the auction, I typically wear my shirts. So most people know who I am and where I am. Now, if I'm selling some cars, this is a trick, or this is something that I do. If I'm selling some bad cars, I won't wear my dealership shirt, because at some auctions they say where the car is, who the seller is. But at the end of the day, that's few and far in between. I used to do that back in the day. I will now wear my shirt even when I'm selling cars that may need work or whatever. It's an auction. I run everything red light. But I say all that to say about sparking the conversation is so that you can monitor the inventory. You can see if that dealer is constantly still buying in this time. How much are they overpaying? We all can pull MMR, which is Manheim Market Report. Most of us. If you're not registered for Manheim, then I would definitely encourage you to register for it, just so that you can even. Actually, I don't even think you have to register for Manheim to use MMR. I think now that if you go to manheim.com and you just go through the menu and do the or Google MMR, I think you can pretty much put your stuff in. I don't even think you have to have a subscription anymore or an account with them. I could be wrong, but you can look into that. But most of us can do that. You can go to MMR, you can pull the evaluation to see what the MMR was for that vehicle, and then you can see ultimately what actually sold. Lately, what I have been doing is I've been pulling a run list. I would do my MMRs before, or some type of evaluation or valuation on the vehicle to determine what I should play, whether that's going to be Black Book or MMR or AutoNeek or whatever system you're feeding into to get valuation of your vehicles. Then you should go into the auction with that number, okay? At least for this particular time, so that you can kind of get an understanding of, all right, what's the percentage over. You can also look at a report called the Manheim Market Report Relation Scale. And what that does is, what's going on, Buddha Jackson? How you doing, man? Hope all is well. But what that will do for you is it will give you an idea of how much over the MMR vehicles are selling in your region. In Atlanta or Alabama or South Carolina, Tennessee, Southeast is really, really, really difficult right now because the inflation is at an all-time high. I think most of the inflation right now in the United States, I can't say for sure, but based on what the analysis that I've done, it's mostly in the Southeast and Northeast and the Southwest, kind of in that Texas corridor. But like California, the prices are fairly still cheap out there. Florida, the values are, the prices are kind of still, you can get some deals still in Florida. But even in the Northeast, you probably can get some deals in relation to Georgia. But right now, I think Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, those 3 states, from my research, are completely high on the inflation scale. So, but yeah, so do that. When you go to these auctions, find out who these dealers are that are buying the vehicles now. And you got your valuation. You can see how much they are actually paying over what the car should have sold for. And then you take that scale, so that way you can kind of have an idea of, okay, well, this is, the average. And if you go to the same auction every week, you can do a whole market report, right, of just that. And you can get an average of the inflation that you are seeing. And then you can even, if you want to get real deep and technical with it and statistical with it, you can actually go ahead and start charting it and plotting it, and you can create your own trend line. Again, I'm a business major, so this type of stuff is what I like to do. And so I like to have indicators. I'm real big on statistics. I'm real big on numbers. I think that I'm a firm believer on the numbers don't lie. The numbers typically always tell the story. Where there is money to be made, you'll see a lot of people there. Where there is no money to be made, you won't see a lot of people there. And so that's one of the things that you can do to combat this. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, after you have determined those particular dealers, then you watch their inventory. See if they're actually selling. See what they're pricing them at. At the end of the day, just because we see a price on a vehicle does not mean that that's the price that it's sold for, right? We all know that. But at least you have an indicator of the market in your area. So until you have done that, you shouldn't use your money, especially if your margins are already or were already low before the pandemic happened. If you were only making $500 to $700 per car, I don't know if your market, if your consumers are paying that inflation on the back end. If they are, then fine. One of the ways you can determine it is do exactly what I just said before I started talking about this. Chart it out, make sure it's there. If it's there, keep doing it. Do not buy a surplus though of vehicles, because I'm telling you, you just never know when that point of correction is going to happen. And that's going to happen when the consumers facilitate it. The consumers are going to facilitate when the bubble pops or the balloon pops. Right now, everybody that's putting air into that balloon, we're just talking about the car business right now, but there are so many other balloons in the world, right? But we're just talking about the car business. So all of the dealers that are paying this highly ridiculous inflated rate, you're just blowing into that balloon, blowing into the balloon. And so simulate it in your head. So you got this big gigantic balloon, and then one of the consumers or a couple of the consumers, they get to a point where they just can't take it, and they just go pop your balloon. And once that balloon pops, that's it. You got the inventory. Your numbers are what they are. So if you paid $500 over, $700 over, right? So 700%, 800%, 500% over value. Guess what? Now that's your inventory. And I will be buying your cars at the auction in a couple months when the bubble bursts and you can't do anything but try and hope to break even. Like, that's what we are. So again, ride the wave if it can work for you. I'm not saying that you cannot sell cars right now. That's not what I'm saying. We sold 3 in one day here just a couple days ago. I'm not saying you can't sell cars. I'm not even saying you can't sell them at an inflated rate. Here's what you should do though. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can do. Just to test it out. If you don't want to be that cat that actually, forge conversations with people at auctions or watch the auction, the dealers at these auctions, if you don't want to do all that research and all of that, then try to get a car in your price point, right? We're all trying to do that. That's a hard job right now, but stay committed to it, stay dedicated to it, but price it as if it was inflated, right? So price it. So if you bought it for $1,000, right, you're going to assume for pricing that you bought it for $2,000, right? Because then you can simulate inflation. You can see if it really works in your area without you actually paying $2,000 first. So you can simulate in your head that you paid $2,000 for it. So if your profit margin that you want to make is $1,500 per unit, then you buy that. If you can find a car that meets that valuation, because again, as I said before, vehicles don't technically work like that to where you can buy it and say, I gotta make $1,500 every car. Now I can do that because I used to be able to do that because of the type of cars that I was buying and because of the prices. I for my lot, to be honest with you, I never cared about Black Book or Blue Book or no other NADA. I never cared about it. All I did was make my profit. I would go to the auction. I would buy a car for $800, and I would sell that car for $2,895, or $2,495, or $2,395. I didn't check NADA. I didn't check AutoNeat. I didn't do any of that because my market that I'm in right now, to have a car lot to where 80 to 90% of your cars are under $3,000, your market base for that is completely high. So I didn't have to make sure that my numbers were jam up. A lot of cars I've sold well undervalued. Some cars I would say right now, if I looked at all of my deals that I've done this past year, 2020, and I looked at the valuation relative to what I sold it for, I would be willing to bet money that about at least at minimum 80% of those vehicles that I've sold were underpriced. Now some people were probably watching that and say, what the heck? So you telling me you knew the vehicles was underpriced and you didn't care? I didn't, because my profit was realized. And so, because when you start talking about these used cars, you're talking about A to B cars that I sell. You're talking about cars with check engine lights on. You're talking about cars with cosmetic imperfections. You have to be dang on near a Houdini to really value them to the penny, right? And so it made it easier for me to stay in a margin to where I knew, I got about 10 cars that I just know my valuations on. I don't even need to look at no numbers. I know what they're going to do on my lot because of the track record and the time and the tenure of doing this. You learn and things get easier over time. Every time, literally every month in the car business, if you're doing it right, every month should get easier and easier and easier and easier. If you are in your car business right now and you're listening to this video, and I don't know who you are, but if every month it's getting harder and harder and harder, you're doing something wrong. Because knowledge, when you gain knowledge, that makes things flow easier. When you know how to do something, it is a smoother process versus when you don't know what you're doing. That process is a little bit more laborious. It's a little bit more time consuming because I got to read the directions. I got to figure out, okay, do I do it like this? Do I do it like this? Okay, I'm just going to do it like this and figure out what happens. And then when it does not work, I have to go back and do it all over again, right? So when you have obtained a level of knowledge, you should get easier and easier and easier. So I don't want to, again, guys, you got to follow me now. When I'm doing these videos about one topic, you guys got to just, take notes and really get in there and be engaged. But I promise you it'll all come together when you think about it in the grand scheme or in the big scheme. But anyway, if your margins, again, simulate it. Do the simulation. If you normally would buy the car for $4,000, say you bought it for $2,000. So your baseline is $2,000. Okay. So if you want to make $1,000 per car, plus your dock fees or whatever, so let's just say we'll price that car at $3,500. Okay, or even $3,695. Give you some room to negotiate. You got your fees in there. If you have a salesperson, whatever their commission is, make sure you add it all in there. And see how fast it takes you to sell that car for $36.95. In this current market, I would say, now don't kill yourself on this car, because you're simulating this. This ain't real. So if you give yourself 10 days or 14 days to see if you can move the unit, then that's a good way for you to be able to know if your market is ripe enough for you to be out here paying 100 times double what is supposed to be paid. Okay, I'm looking at a question here, that's why I got stumbled. Buddha says, also, if you have a make that sells good, try to stick to that make. Absolutely. Why recreate the wheel? You know what I mean? Whatever works, and duplicate it over and over and over again. Absolutely. It makes it a lot easier. I'm going to open it up for questions if you are watching, if you got some questions about anything I've said thus far. But yeah, try to simulate that inflation metric. I have not done that. I have maintained my same standard here. We have been moving cars at our same profit margin. We've been moving cars at our same duration. And a lot of people don't talk to you about that or in their videos. I think, it's crazy because when I was doing my videos, like the actual, I bought this car and I sold it at this time, I started to see more of those videos being made by other YouTubers that I had met at auctions and things like that, because that type of content is what people want to see. But again, it takes time to get to that point to know which makes, as Buddha said, which makes are going to give you the best return. But your days on the market, guys, need to be low. But right now, they may not be low because of everything that's going on. But for us here at Dealmart Auto Sales, we are still fairly okay, which is where we are accustomed to being. So let's walk outside. I'm gonna show you what I got on my lot. I showed you the camera earlier, so if you just got here, you're gonna just see it live of what I have on the lot. I only have 2 vehicles here on this lot today, and this week we started with 5 or 6. So we've sold cars this week so far, and it's just tough, man. It's tough because it's such a you know what's interesting, and I think the reason why inflation is so high, because consumers are legit buying cars. Like, they are still legit buying cars. But again, you have to know that they're going to buy your car. You have to know that you have a reputation that gives them the ability to come and buy your car, or at least you know how to get them in the door. So yeah, I don't want to get off topic. I mean, get too far from what I'm gonna do. I don't think I've ever showed y'all my little office, man. This is a little country Dealmart Auto Sales. So we got 2 desks on this side of the office, and then we have a desk on this side of the office, which is where I was sitting. You see the mug shots on the things up there? The mug shot to your right is actually if you follow Grind Reloaded, I told you about a guy that stole from Dealmart, right? That's him right there. That's him. And that's public record. So I'm not defaming or any of that. You can go to Russell County mug shots and actually see it yourself. So, but that's the gentleman who ripped Dealmart off for about $1,200. So yeah. So let's step out here and give you a little bit of an idea of where I am and what we look like. So we got a little porch out here. Got speakers, got a little ceiling fans. I've never used those ceiling fans, by the way. But yeah. So these are the 2 cars that's on my lot. We got a 2005 Trailblazer, 3 rows. It's a 3-row Trailblazer, so it's an extended version. It runs and drives okay. The AC only works on one side of the vehicle. This is a car that I only had $895 into it. But when I got it here to the lot, it needed some more items. And so I went ahead and I put in a new radiator, a new water pump, new thermostat, which I will tell you that I should not have done. I think I put like $500 more into the vehicle. So I personally, hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. I should have wholesale it. I should have taken it to the auction and did a wholesale on it, broke even, and you know, pretty much reinvested that money in another vehicle. And then this other vehicle over here to the right is a repossession. I got that one in as a repo last week or a week and a half ago. So when buy here, pay here, this is when buy here, pay here can actually work for you. It's a repo. We got it back on the lot. But you see, all this space is empty. All this space is empty. We normally have 2 rows of vehicles here, about 6 across, so 12 on this side, and about 5 on this side. And it went from 5 to 6. And then we got another repo back here. But my lot, I got enough, you know, I got enough space to where really we can do some grading and actually take this up. And I could have another 20, not 20, but I need the used tire. So now it is so dope to just be able to just drive the car across the street and, you know, tell them, hey, bring it up, you know, drive it back across the street whenever you're done and pick up your money. So that's really cool. Booty says, I like the fact that you can lock up your fence. Absolutely. Yep. We got a whole locking fence over here, man. This is a repo as well that I did not get the key back for. The down payment, I think I made maybe about $300 on top of the down payment. So I made $300 profit before it went into repossession status. I had already gotten black, meaning I've gotten all my money back out of it and only netted a profit of like $300 before the repo happened. Now, I'll show you a couple things about this car and the reasons why it's just sitting here. And well, the main reason is because I don't have the key. The debtor, the customer, complained that the car quit running and we went and repossessed it. My mindset was that he was going to at least give us the key for it, but you know how that works. So I don't have the key, and then I'm thinking like, okay, should I invest in the key for a car where the debtor has already told me that the car doesn't run? So my answer to you guys, if you're facing this situation, is no, don't buy the key. Send it to your local auction as an in-op, no key, and get out of it what you can. Now, I probably will only be able to get maybe a couple $100 for this car because it's an Impala. And I think it has like 200 and something thousand miles on it. So yeah, but that's a good way to make, if I make $300 more, or I did a profit of, you know, $600 on the car, not too horrible. But let me show you a couple of things about this car. So this car actually had rust. This car came from Tallahassee, Florida. And this is why Florida cars are a hell of a lot cheaper than Georgia cars, because the salt from the ocean actually just desecrate those cars. So if you are a Florida dealer, I'm sure you can attest to that. And they, you know, still had the drive out tag on the back. July 17th was when that expired. So it's been, you know, it's been a while, but it's only been here for about a week, I think. But I gotta go ahead and have it towed over to the auction so they can run it as an in-op. But yeah, man, that's what's going on. Let's see, what time is it? Dang, it's 6:30. It's time for me to close up the lot. Anybody got any questions? We got more than Buddha watching this, so if you got a question, this is your opportunity to ask me. One of the things I was, you know, that I want to do, I'm gonna say I want to do, is I want to buy this location, and what I want to do is I want to possibly, ideally, I would love to just concrete it or asphalt it, pave it, whatever, whichever word you want to use. But pave in here, all of this being solid, paved, and grade this area here so that it's like flat a grade up there where it's flat, and so it's like one big area. But before I do that, well, I'm not gonna do any of that unless I buy it. And if I buy this location, and I don't want to do the paving first, I was told, and you guys can let me know if you've heard of this before. It's called crush and run. So it's like broken up, like I guess like gravel dust, but it's packed into the ground so deep to where it's literally like a coating or a yeah, I guess you could say a coating, but it's like pavement, but it's not really concrete. But that's an option down here too. Then I had one person say, man, you should just get like some turf. Get the little thing you can buy, just turf your whole lot, so it's like flat grass. But nah. And then the other option is gravel, loose gravel, but loose gravel is just not sustainable long term. My first car lot, I had loose gravel and it was a mess. You see all this gravel out here. So loose gravel is definitely not good for high traffic area, in my opinion, unless it's like way back and you got a big area of gravel, because then you're not moving it everywhere. But yeah, man, this is US 80 West. I got some of these feather flags, some more that I'm gonna be ordering, and I'm probably gonna, if the negotiations work as far as buying this location, we'll put up an actual a sign up here. But I mean, this little spot has been good to me, man. Damn this Corona, but you know, it happens. The Corona got me looking like this, y'all. 1, 2. I bought one today. It's a 2008 Ford Fusion. I bought it for $800. I think with the fees, I think it came up to $1,005. So that's gonna be here. Hopefully my guy will go and pick it up. I need to like wire them, because I'm not gonna be able to get up there to pay that in person. But yeah. Let's see. Go to the comments. All right. Bop, bop, bop. So Buddha says you have to put down, will just be a mess. That would be a mess. But yeah, I definitely got to kill that grass. And I think what I was gonna do too is, if I do the crush and run, I was gonna do like pretty much almost like grading it. So like skim it across and then put like a tarp. So put like a tarp on the ground throughout the whole property, and then do the level. So pretty much skim it, pack it, put the tarp, and then put the crush and run on top of it. And so that way the grass and the dirt, there's a barrier between the two. But obviously we know soil and all of that stuff, it just, you know, the tarp will eventually settle into the ground. But that was kind of what my plan was. You got here late, turn your notification bell on. Make sure you are notified when I do go live. And let's see, if you do, and also if you got here late, go back and watch the video once I get off the live, because I gave some really good information in the beginning. I think this is probably one of my best informative videos in a long time. So if you want to know how to combat this whole inflation and not play into it, definitely go back to. But obviously I don't. He didn't show up, so we'll keep it pushing. All right, man, I will see y'all on the next video. Don't freaking that by simulating it, then have at it. Don't stock up on a lot of inflated vehicles.